we're live streaming, right? And we have 17 people watching right now, so that's awesome. Yay! So thank you guys for making that happen. It's really an honor to be speaking here tonight with so many smart people. I do feel a little bit out of place at this conference because I am absolutely nowhere near an academic, but I am an animal liberation activist. I live here in Minneapolis, and tonight I'm going to be talking about the humane farming myth. Admittedly, this is not a new subject. It's been widely debated and discussed in the animal rights movement. I know it's not a new topic. I'm not here to introduce anyone to the debate, but I am here to share a perspective on animal advocacy, animal exploitation that's based on my personal experiences as an activist, an abolitionist, and a happy rape survivor. While my talk is entitled Happy Rape, Happy Meat, I don't intend to limit the scope to just meat. We can't ignore the fact that the dairy and egg industries are founded entirely on rape and the manipulation of female reproductive systems, where cows and hens lack any control over their bodies or babies. I titled the talk after my essay in the Defiant Daughters anthology because happy meat is a term that so many of us are familiar with based on the savvy marketing departments of companies that have minimally reduced cruelties they inflict on animals, and then they encourage the public to celebrate this generous step, oftentimes by paying more for their products. When I shop for groceries, I pass the cold, pink bodies of beheaded chickens, the steely, scaled bodies of dead fish laid out on ice strips, and the marbled muscles of other mammals. I hold my breath, and I try not to look. Images of contented, calm cows rolling in green pastures decorate packages that hold milk from a grieving mother, meant for a child she'll never know. Was this milk meant for her firstborn? Her second? Her fifth? That's unlikely, as most of these mothers don't live to see their fifth calf be dragged away. I pass the refrigerated cases that hold eggs, and because benign cardboard packaging hides them, I often don't even notice those, except when I'm at a co-op and the eggs are laid out for people to pick and choose the exact ones that they want. And those shells that leave these overtaxed birds' bones brittle from calcium depletion will likely be cracked and discarded without a thought to the would-be mother of that would-be chick. And because I mostly shop at natural foods co-ops and Whole Foods markets, I often see signs for free-range eggs or humane beef with a 5-step animal-centered rating, which is the highest compassionate animal standard bestowed upon these lucky victims. You know, the kind of animal products that you can pick up with one hand while patting yourself on the back with the other. Animal industry presenting itself as local, family-run, or organic often cultivates the idea that as long as no factory farms or battery cages or other really cruel practices went into making their products, that they're humane or ethical. Sure, a turkey destined for a meat department in a natural foods co-op might have had one bad day, but she lived a good enough life, and anyone eating a burger from her flesh can feel good about it. But exploitation of any animal, no matter how big or small, is done without their consent. Just as giant elephants are killed for their ivory, tiny honeybees are manipulated for their honey, with which they feed their young, or wax with which they build their homes. No amount of supposed compassion or kind treatment can give back to these animals what has been stolen from them. Just like no one can ever fully restore the part of a rape victim destroyed by his or her rapist. And sadly, it's not just animal industry that promotes happy meat. Any organization that applauds and endorses the reduction of only the most egregious parts of it is implicitly supporting the concept of happy meat. Animal welfare groups justify their focus on gradual improvements to animal exploitation in several ways. They say that any step, however small, to reduce animal suffering is a positive one, and that more victories can be had by taking an incremental approach. They fail to acknowledge that while they're working diligently to reduce animal suffering, they're also acting as marketing agents for animal industry. For example, PETA, the Humane Society of the United States, Mercy for Animals, Farm Sanctuary, and over a dozen other animal welfare groups joined together to endorse the meat department at Whole Foods for their commitment to compassionate standards for farmed animals. And in doing so, they made a clear statement to the world that because these animals who were exploited and killed for their flesh at Whole Foods weren't subjected to the most violent aspects of animal exploitation, that it's okay to buy their happy meat. How many people see the signs on the meat coolers at Whole Foods every day and are assured that they can buy their steak or their chicken breasts free of guilt because they were humanely produced, and have even received the stamp of approval from a bunch of animal welfare groups? And right now, there's a federal bill in the legislature called the Egg Products Inspection Act Amendments of 2013. It's also known as the Rotten Egg Bill by its opponents. Not surprisingly, the bill is heartily endorsed by United Egg Producers and egg councils across the country. More surprisingly though, it's also being championed by the Humane Society of the United States, Farm Sanctuary, Mercy for Animals, and Compassion Over Killing. If it passes, it will institutionalize and cement the practice of caging hens forced to lay eggs for human consumption across the nation. This legislation seeks to establish enriched cages for egg-laying hens as a national standard that cannot be changed by individual states or by public vote or referendum. It's being touted by animal welfare groups as a bill that would improve the lives of billions of animals, despite the fact that the law would nullify the self-proclaimed victories some of these groups have made in regards to banning or restricting cages for hens used for egg laying. These supposed improvements, which are already occurring due to public pressure stemming from educational outreach efforts, would be rolled out at the glacial pace of 18 years. That's about 9 generations of hens forced into this industry. And if we translate that into the equivalent of human generations and we apply a rape analogy, we're talking 225 years' time to allow rapists to adjust their assault methods so they're a bit more humane. Happy meat and enriched cages are concepts that make something which is fundamentally unethical seem somehow acceptable. No animal ever has or ever will give his or her consent to being enslaved or slaughtered. Regardless of how quickly one kills an animal or how little one abuses them without their consent, it's analogous to rape. Happy meat is happy rape. I was a victim of happy rape when I was 15 years old. My rape didn't look like the ones that you see on Law & Order. I was not beaten, stabbed, left for dead in a dark alley. I was raped indoors. I was raped on a bed by an acquaintance. No weapons. But I didn't give my consent. Should my rape be considered humane or ethical because I wasn't beaten or stabbed? After all, it could have been a lot worse. At least I was on a bed. At least he only did it once. At least I wasn't gang raped. At least I wasn't a small child when it happened. I escaped without physical disfigurement. And I was even lucky enough to be raped in a culture where I wouldn't be sentenced to death for being a rape victim. No organization which fights against rape would ever give their seal of approval to my rape or any form of rape, regardless of how violent or happy it is. No rapist should be encouraged or applauded for using a roofie instead of a gun to incapacitate the victim. Rape is universally recognized as abhorrent and unethical, no matter what form it takes, as it should be. And animal exploitation should be no different. An organization fighting only against the most violent aspects of animal exploitation is no different than an anti-rape group fighting against only certain types of rape. Animals do not give their consent to be bred, raised in captivity, killed, worn, tested on, used for our amusement. The degree of